Now, let's take you back to our lead story, one of them, which is the South Sudan Agreement, and the opposition party, SPLM-DC, saying and calling for inclusiveness in this process. I'm now being joined from Juba, South Sudan, by Dr. Lam. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Well, what really is the bone of contention here? Is it the peace progress or the implementation of the peace agreement?
Well, really it is both, because if you know, you remember this crisis came about as a result of a power struggle within the SPLM. And therefore the parties have been continuing to debate for 20 months, discussing the sharing power rather than addressing the root causes of the problem. And therefore, when they could not arrive at something after 20 months, the mediators brought in a proposal, a compromise proposal, which some parties signed and the government did not sign until 10 days later.
Right, but then still, what would you make? How would you describe the peace process so far? Obviously, you are the opposition leader. You would definitely, what some people would say, that you would have issues definitely with the implementation process. But by and large, how would you describe the peace process in South Sudan?
For us in opposition, we think that any peace is good for the people of South Sudan, because it promises to stop the war. So this peace is not an exception. We think that it is good in that sense, although the provisions, again, give power to the same people who have caused the problem. But the people of South Sudan can live with it for 30 months, as long as after 30 months there will be elections and they will be able to choose the right people. But without peace, you can never see the people exercising their democratic rights.
So are you saying there is no peace at all in South Sudan compared to what used to be obtainable?
Pardon?
Are you saying there is no peace in South Sudan as we speak compared to what used to be obtainable in that country?
Well, yeah, the peace is weak because it was negotiated by two parties. It has never been an inclusive process as promised by IGAD from the very beginning. So when the two parties remain on the table, at the end of the day, they were only concerned about sharing power. They did not address the root causes of the problem. But as long as they could sign and the war can stop, I think it is better than the continuation of war, which is costing a lot of lives. We have now lost more than 50,000 lives. We have more than 2 million refugees and internally displaced. Almost half the population being threatened by hunger. So peace really will be the only thing that will stop all these things.
What is the contribution of your party to this peace process? If you talk inclusiveness, what do you mean in this case?
What I mean by inclusiveness is that, you know, the two parties on the 9th of May last year agreed that the stakeholders would be represented in the talks. And indeed we were represented in the talks as political parties. Then there were the civil society, there were the faith-based group, there were the former detainees, in addition to the two warring parties. But later on in August, when they became very clear that the political parties had their own position regarding how the peace would be achieved, the government of South Sudan objected, and it prevented us from traveling to the venue of the talks. And up to today, we are not allowed to travel outside Juba.
Right. So let's talk about another issue on the table that many have raised. Many in South Sudan have questioned President Kiir's creation of 28 states because he allegedly did not consult all concerned stakeholders. Is this state creation ideally not in the interest of the South Sudanese people? What are your thoughts?
Well, in the first place, it is very unfortunate because, you know, this issue of more states, the position of the government during the talks, you know, the first group to suggest that was the SPLM, SPLA, IO in opposition. They wanted the South Sudan to become 21 states. It was the government that argued against this and said, look, you know, such a major decision cannot be done unless and until the people of South Sudan discuss it thoroughly and reach consensus on what to do. And as a result of that, the issue was delayed to be done during the transitional period when the peace comes. This was as a result of the request of the government. Now the government turns around and then says that now instead of 21, it wants 28 states. And the president issues an order which is in contravention of the Constitution. It violates the Constitution and even violates the peace agreement which they had just signed. The peace agreement has been signed on the basis of 10 states. Now, overnight, with a stroke of a pen, he says the states will be 28. That is a real worry.
Right, Dr. Eko, Lam Eko, is the opposition party leader, SPLM DC, in South Sudan. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on Network Africa. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Well, the crisis in Darfur is casting a shadow of doubt on the peace process in that country. As the UN says, the overall security situation in Sudan's conflict-torn region remains precarious and unpredictable. Assistant Secretary General for Peacekeeping, Edmond Mole, said there were thousands of newly displaced people due to a series of ground clashes and aerial bombardments. The region, historically separate and long neglected by Khartoum, lacks basic infrastructure and social services.
From December 2014 to June 2015, the government of Sudan forces implemented the second phase of the decisive summer counterinsurgency operation, achieving considerable gains against the non-signatory armed movements. The operation, which involved a series of violent ground clashes and aerial bombardment, led to over 104,000 newly confirmed displacements, as well as 69,000 unconfirmed cases, mainly located in the inaccessible East Jebel Mara area. A comprehensive resolution of the Darfur conflict, allowing for the return of the over 2.6 million displaced persons to their places of origin, requires first and foremost a political settlement between the government and the armed movements.
The Nigerian military's offensive against the Boko Haram sector appears to be growing stronger as the force says it will continue to force Boko Haram members out of their hideouts. And this comes as 300 days after 338 people held captive by the militant group were freed. Brigade Commander Victor Izugu confirmed 19 of the captives were rescued on Wednesday and that operations were still ongoing. In the last few months, the military has ramped up its offensive into the Sambisa and surrounding areas with airstrikes and an increase in ground troops.
We are trying to meet the December deadline given to us by our president. And so more operations will be going on into the forest, and then we will tend to rescue more people. Today we rescued 19 from a village again, and it is continuous, and not only in this area, but all around the fringes of Sambisa, where we have cordoned off the entire forest, so our men are carrying out these operations.
We're taking over a short break on Network Africa. When we come back, find out how you can evade traffic and drive smarter on our Africa Tech segment in just a moment. you.